Freud. Did he want to f his mum? Did he want to f his dad? Is your id overwhelming your ego? What is a superego? What is an Oedipus, and even more elusively, what is an Electra? Are you stuck at the anal stage, or are you more of an oral kind of girl? Freud's contributions to the field of psychology continue to shape its current cultural landscape, informing our understanding of concepts such as psychosexual development all the way to the interpretation of dreams. His theories are both interesting and entertaining, even to somebody with no prior engrossment in the field. Rather than focusing on Freud himself, today I would instead like to direct the conversation to a lesser known, yet just as pivotal contributor to the field, his daughter Anna. Anna, whose contributions help tailor psychoanalysis and its potential benefits to children, rather than just primarily focusing on adults as her father did. Anna, whose lifelong friendship with her dear friend Dorothy Burlingham continued to ignite fierce speculation regarding the topic of her sexuality. Today I'm endeavouring to hopefully create something similar to an abridged biographical account of Anna's life. Alongside this, I'm hoping to explore some of her theories of childhood development in a hopefully interesting and more digestible way. Also, hey, editing, ha, editor cam, oh my gosh. My septum is wonky. It probably is right now. No, it's not. Okay, right now in the video it's wonky. I think it's going to be wonky for a little bit longer, and then by the grace of God I like rustled it and it went semi-straight again. So I'm sorry that it's wonky. I think because I have a cold I can't stop playing with my nose, so sometimes my septum just goes like that and it's like, oh. So yeah, apologies, but it will straighten out soon. My core motivation for this video was interrogating Anna's relationship with Dorothy. This is purely because whenever I read articles which discuss their relationship, I feel it's been done in a very possibly intentionally obtuse way and it gets on my nerves. So I am going to be the one to set the record straight. As you could have guessed by the word abridged, this video is not comprehensive. I am primarily hitting on the parts of the story that I personally find interesting. If you'd like to do a deeper dive yourself, I've left a bevy of links in the description that you can use to dig deeper into Anna's story. Okay, that's the introduction. Now let me go off script and quickly tell you that I am very ill. Not very ill. Doctors are saying that I might survive this common cold. I don't have any other time to film this video, so I have to do it now. I've waited a few days to try and see if my symptoms get better. They're not. So I sound stuffy and my voice is a little bit gravelly, so I apologise for that, but I literally have no other time to film this video. I have to do it now. So yeah, apologies for that. Also, hi! I had a video that was meant to come out in August, I believe, yeah, in August. I had it fully edited. It's on my hard drive right now, but I hated it. I watched it back and I just hated it, so I scrapped the whole video and I started working on this one instead. So I'm sorry for vanishing, but I'm back now, and I hope that I will be able to upload consistently at least once a month. But I did say that last time and then missed the following month, so let's just see how it goes. The Freud Museum's website was a really good resource for this video, and it kind of acted as the foundation for this first part in which I go over Anna's early life. I really like this article because it included excerpts from family letters, which I felt gave a really good insight. If you want to read the article for yourself, it will be one of the top links in the description, so please feel free to check them out. Born in 1895, Anna's early life could be described as turbulent. She experienced great strife with her mother Martha, and as such, she kept her distance. The Freud Museum article denoted that Martha was known to be strict and cold. In a later writing, Anna seemingly derided her mother for the hypocritical way in which she governed her household. My mother observed no rules, she made her own rules. Martha had chosen not to nurse Anna as she had with her previous children, and took her first solo family holiday away from the Freuds when Anna was only 10 months old. I was going to talk about Bowlby's, what's the theory called? Real psychology heads know what I'm talking about. Is it maternal deprivation? Yeah. Okay, I was talking about maternal deprivation. I was going to talk about maternal deprivation here, but I'm not a psychologist and I didn't want to like pretend to know what I'm talking about fully. And also Bowlby's theories have been kind of unanimously derided for being incredibly misogynistic. But if you do subscribe to Bobby's theories, Martha kind of f***ed Anna over here. The inexplicable coldness exhibited to Anna by Martha was not explained in any of the articles I could find. It's possible that maybe she was just completely knackered after the 5 previous children, which, like, fair enough. I don't think I could even cope with 1. Still not an excuse for depriving Anna of that maternal nurturing, and this was probably a major factor in Anna's young mental strife. Josephine Sillars, who I'm going to refer to as Josephine now because I think I'm saying her last name wrong, was a nurse hired to care for the 3 youngest Freuds, those being Anna, Ernst and Sophie. Josephine was regarded as Anna's psychological mother, a role which her biological mother had obviously failed to fulfill. Josephine was said to nurture the children with daily walks around the local parks and adopted a very warm approach to parenting that greatly resonated with Anna. Josephine also shared a keen love of animals with Anna, and I'd imagine that this, in conjunction with her warm parenting style, really solidified the two's bond, and perhaps even further greatened the distance between Anna and her biological mother. Josephine, I'd imagine, showed young Anna how a mother was supposed to behave. The term psychological mother slightly eludes me. It's certainly true that Anna did take a very warm approach to psychological practice with young children when she was older and practicing. So the term could mean that Anna's psychological approach was modelled on how she was treated by Josephine. More simplistically though, it could just mean that Josephine cared for Anna's psychological well-being, and I am just overthinking it. Anna's childhood woes persisted as she experienced ostracization from the other children in her family. This feeling of otherness was thankfully quelled by her unshakably close bond with her father, Sigmund.
Sigmund Freud.
Sigmund Freud. Fantastic. During a family holiday, Anna recalled that the others all went off in a boat and left me at home, either because the boat was too full or I was too little. This time I did not complain, and my father, who was watching the scene, praised and comforted me. That made me so happy that nothing else mattered. Some foreshadowing about the closeness with her father. And no, it's not incest. Anna was exceptionally close with her father and very interested in his psychological work, in which she showed a keen interest in even from an early age. This affection was reciprocated by her father, who was seemingly her saving grace in a family which often took her presence for granted. Freud endearingly regarded Anna as a mischievous child. Writing to his friend Wilhelm Flies, he stated, "Anna has become downright beautiful through naughtiness." Another source of grief in young Anna's life was her older sister Sophie. In a 2008 biography written by Elizabeth Young Brawl, the author denotes that Sophie was the most difficult sibling, the focus of her jealousy. An article published in 2014 by Aldridge, Kilgo and Jet Kemboy, which will be linked in the description, further highlights why this jealousy seemingly consumed young Anna. Sophie was the beauty of the family, while Anna had the brains. Imagine subtly being called ugly in a published paper. Oh my god. The article published by the Freud Museum, which I've been using earlier, also denotes that Sophie was her mother's favourite child, and again reasserts that Sophie was very beautiful. We get it, she's ugly, Anna's ugly. Somebody tell Little Hans that we have beaten the horse to death. He doesn't have to worry about being bitten anymore. The Freud Museum denotes that the rivalry between Sophie and Anna was so fierce that the household struggled to maintain its peace. The fire was finally extinguished in 1913 when Sophie married and moved out of the family house. Anna wrote to her father a week before the marriage, denoting, "I am glad that Sophie is getting married because the unending quarrel between us was horrible for me." Anna was also consoled by the prospect of spending more time with her father. Again, we see this close bond between the two manifesting in the ways in which Anna would comfort herself during times of familial strife. For this next section, cataloguing her early adulthood experiences, I'm going to go through it in a lot less detail than I did for her childhood. I felt personally that her childhood experiences really shaped her later work. so I felt like it was important to detail them fully. Again, a link to the Freud Museum's articles regarding Anna will be placed down below if you wish to look through her early adult life in less of an abridged way, the one that I'm going to give you now. In 1914, a year after Sophie's marriage, Anna went on to pursue a teaching apprenticeship. After passing her entrance exams, she decided to reward herself with a trip to England. Shortly after this, World War I broke out and she was declared an illegal alien and forced to leave. How rude of the English to interrupt her holiday like that. She subsequently travelled back to Vienna to continue with her teacher training. Though the schooling system at this time in Austria has been widely criticised for churning out obedient citizens rather than ambitious pupils, Anna has been noted to be a shining beacon of warmth and compassion during the wartime years, which were marked with little fuel for heating and little food. She had quickly ascended to the head of second grade, and one of her former pupils remarked that this young lady had far more control over us than the older aunties. Hi, me again. You're about to notice like quite a big shift in lighting and framing, and that's because I do everything on an iPhone and a MacBook Air, so you can imagine the grief that I have to endure to edit these videos. So sometimes my phone will just stop recording and then I'll have to start a new one. So the reason why these two frames are about to look very different from each other, the one you just saw and the one you're about to see, is because the camera just stopped filming at a random point and I had to start again. And it looks different because I had to take my phone out of the tripod, delete loads of stuff to make more room to film more stuff, yada yada yada. So the film has been repositioned and for some reason the lighting is different. Don't know why, but I apologise for that, and that's why it looks a bit disjointed. Sorry. The previously mentioned article, written by Aldridge, Kilgo and Jep Kemboy in 2014, denoted that Anna had left teaching due to illness and then decided to pursue psychoanalysis like her father. What is psychoanalysis? So in order to discuss Anna's working context, I'm going to give you a brief crash course on psychoanalysis. Do not skip, it will not be boring. It might be boring, it will probably be boring, but don't skip anywhere because you're not going to know what I'm talking about. Unless you're already like a psychology expert, in which case go ahead. Initially I was gonna like not even write a script for this section and just do it off my own brain, and then I thought I don't want to be an agent of misinformation so I did not do that. I have used this article and condensed it. I'm telling you the article because I don't want to be the female James Somerton. So if you want the full detailed breakdown from actual, what I'm assuming to be experts of psychology regarding psychoanalysis, please visit the description where you will find the links to the specific article. I also wanted to get a whiteboard for this so that I could draw like the conscious and the subconscious mind as like an iceberg and label it, but I thought I'm not stealing Wendigoon's gimmick. I will leave him alone. So psychoanalysis suggests that essentially the roots of our psychological problems are unresolved conflicts that are lingering in our subconscious minds. In order to therefore alleviate the psychological symptoms that we experience, we need to delve into the subconscious, restore these disturbances to our conscious minds and address them. Freud would have his clients lay on a sofa while he prodded them about their dreams. This is why you will often see psychologists and psychologists' office, I should say, depicted in the media with the sofa and the person like laying down like that and the psychologist taking notes like that. He would also encourage the client while they were led on the sofa or laid. He would also encourage the client to recount their childhood experiences while laying down on the sofa, and while he encouraged them to do this, he would ensure that he was sat outside of the client in order to facilitate free association. Free association in this therapeutic context refers to enabling the client to speak whatever comes to mind, no matter how random it may seem, like just this random stream of consciousness. He wanted his clients to completely verbalize all of it so that he could note it down. Freud hypothesized that this random stream of consciousness that his client would be verbalizing was our way of understanding our subconscious, and it can be analysed in order to do this. A Freudian slip, which you may have heard of, or is more studiously referred to as a parapraxis, is another way in which Freud hypothesized that we can understand somebody's subconscious. Say, for example, you call your new girlfriend your ex-girlfriend's name. Freud suggested that this wasn't a simple slip of the tongue, but instead a significant incident of the subconscious mind bubbling to the surface, or conscious mind. That was enough exposition, so we'll continue with the video. I wrote in the script, this is enough exposition for you to follow what we discussed today. It's not, and there's going to be more. But this is enough exposition for right now. We'll come back to more boring psychological jargon shortly, but for now that's enough. Anna was interested in working with children. In my opinion, this was spurred on by her classroom interactions with children, and probably more notably her own troubled childhood. Perhaps you could argue that she was attempting to be the help that she never received as a child. Becoming a psychoanalyst required Anna to fully immerse herself in the Vienna Psychoanalytical Society. She had started by translating psychological papers from German to English and attending her father's lectures. Following Freud's diagnosis of cancer of the jaw in 1923, Anna had actually become his nurse, his spokesperson, and she went on to attend meetings that he was too unwell to attend himself. Anna's first published paper, 1922's Beating Fantasies and Daydreams, goes on to detail the violent beating fantasies and daydreams of a 15-year-old girl. I found this paper really interesting for reasons that we will discuss, so if you will oblige me, more psychological jargon, I would appreciate it, because we're going to go over it now. So the main reason why I find this so interesting is because most psychologists concur that this paper that Anna wrote about this supposed 15-year-old girl was herself. She was the 15-year-old girl being written about in this paper. As such, she refers to herself in third person, but it is supposedly her. The reason why they think it's her is, well, there are a few reasons. One of them is that she didn't actually have any clients at the time that she published this paper. And the second was that her father had written a article about the same 15-year-old girl. So putting the two together, they think that it's Anna. And I think that when we go through the paper, you will probably concur that it is too. Okay, so it being Anna is fucking crazy. Because the paper details Anna's, how do I say, in a algorithm friendly sense, self-gratification fantasies. So that's not that crazy in itself. We're all adults here, hopefully. So analysing a self-gratification fantasy, that's like along the lines of psychoanalysis, that seems to fit. Okay, that's fine. The crazy part is that Freud, her father, actually was the one to initially analyse her fantasies. Yes, so before this paper was published, Freud published a paper detailing these same fantasies that Anna is about to discuss, meaning that young Anna, poor Anna, had her most private, intimate thoughts poked, prodded, dissected and analysed by her father. Imagine sitting with your dad and letting him like squeeze your brain for your most bizarre prepubescent fantasies. Like, I can't even think about it. Genuinely a fate worse than death. What a fucking soldier Anna was. So without further ado, let us explore what Anna concluded her teenage fantasies meant, and I promise you the conclusion is much weirder than you're expecting. Okay, so Anna's paper primarily discusses two different make-believe scenarios. One of the fantasies, I don't know why I'm doing two. One of the fantasies, referred to as the beating fantasy, is the one that we're concerned with in this video, and the other, referred to as the nice stories. Interesting, but I'm not interested in talking about it for this video. I think I might mention it a little bit when we go through the paper, but not very much. So yeah, those are the two, beating fantasy and nice stories. So Anna begins by denoting that these beating fantasies began for the girl, and remember, Anna is the girl, when the girl was around 5 or 6. The paper detailed that the fantasy began as an adult man beating a boy, and later developed into many adults beating one boy. The paper interestingly states that the extrinsic features of the characters in this fantasy, like their names, their appearances, were irrelevant to the girl. Also irrelevant was the misdeed that the boy had supposedly committed in order to initiate this beating from the adults. The paper continued to denote that this fantasy would excite the girl and that the fantasy would terminate in an act of self-pleasure. If you'll recall, at the beginning of this segment, I said that Freud had also analysed this exact same fantasy, and the conclusion that she draws is that this fantasy was a secret yearning for paternal love. So yes, Anna detailed her secret self-pleasure fantasies to her father, and he in turn diagnosed her with severe daddy issues. This is very strange, it's very weird. How did he break down this fantasy to come to this conclusion? Just to be clear, I don't actually really like a lot of Freud's work. So when I say like, how did he break this down to come to the conclusion? This isn't me saying it in a scientific way, like this is how this makes sense. I don't think it makes sense. I'm just telling you how he made it make sense to himself. Third time's the charm, you might say, because I have done this 3 times. Okay, so in order to understand Freud's interpretation of Anna's fantasy, we're going to encounter again a lot of psychological terminology. And I would like to reiterate again that I am a novice. I am nowhere near an expert. I am not a psychologist. I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm quite thick. This is my novice interpretation of Anna's paper and subsequently Freud's analysis that she borrowed to put in her paper. I am taking precaution to try and make sure that I'm not misconstruing her text, but I would still implore you to read the text for yourself and come to your own conclusions rather than just listening to what I say, because I don't want to spread misinformation accidentally. Essentially, Freud argued that the original beating fantasy, that being the boy and the man, was representative of the girl and her father. He also argued, however, that this was not the first iteration of the fantasy. It was the first conscious iteration of the fantasy, but Freud argued that there was another repressed iteration of the fantasy that came before this one. And in that one, the boy was representative of the girl's siblings rather than the girl, and the man was still the father. So in this instance, the fantasy was representative of the father beating the girl's siblings. Freud argued that this fantasy caused a lot of subconscious guilt, and as such, it caused the fantasy to be twisted and redirected to the girl. So instead of the boy representing the siblings, the guilt made the boy represent the girl herself. You can think of this metamorphosis of the beating fantasy as sort of a punishment for a devious thought from the brain. And to clarify, all of this was unconscious. This wasn't Anna intentionally thinking, the boy is my sibling and the man is my father. This was a subconscious process according to Freud, which Freud then analysed using psychoanalysis to pull out this very subjective meaning. Anna concludes her father's analysis of her fantasy by stating that the hidden meaning of this strange fantasy can still be expressed with the words, "Father loves only me." Ooh. I tried to keep that simplistic, but oh my god, was that convoluted. I hope it wasn't like indiscernible for everyone watching. So poor Anna, right? If we are to subscribe to her father's psychoanalysis, this young girl's desire for her father's admiration, approval, attention was so crushing that it was even beginning to bleed out into her completely unrelated fantasies. I'd imagine that this was also exacerbated by her distant relationship with her mother, and made worse again by the inadequacy she must have felt when she compared herself to her sister, who, in being more attractive, maybe she thought was more deserving of her father's affection. I detailed this paper because I think it really well highlighted what I think was a core pillar in Anna's life, which was her unwillingness to stop striving for her father's admiration and attention in everything she did. I think that this dedication to her father explains a lot of elements in her later life, in particular her sexuality, which we are going to get into. Following the publication of this paper, Anna began her psychoanalytical practices with children in 1923. So now that we have explored the paper which kickstarted her career as a psychoanalyst, what differentiated her work from her father's work? Returning to the FM article, we can immediately note some key differences between Anna's work and her father's. Anna, noticing the impossibility of keeping children still, probably during her time as a teacher, did away with the psychoanalytical couch. She argued that as children struggled to keep still, they would struggle very heavily with laying down and doing the practice of free association. As such, she allowed them to roam around the room and play. If a child romped around on the carpet, she would do the same. She was very interested in children's drawings and regarded them as just as important to understanding the child's psyche as spoken word. I think this is incredibly apt, given that children obviously have some barriers to language, given the various vocabulary obstacles. I find her willingness to adapt her father's work to suit a more vulnerable population very admirable. Given her admiration for her father, one might think that she'd stick very rigidly to his rulebook and simply just try and perpetuate the work which he has already done. Instead of this, she wasn't afraid to reiterate the foundations to make them better suit what her own mission was. On top of getting rid of the psychoanalytical couch and incorporating drawings into her psychoanalysis, Anna also postulated the specific age at which she thought children were most suited for psychoanalysis, that being during their latency period, which is around the age of 6. Her father Freud argued that during the latency period, children's libidos were sublimed into other outlets. Why did I just use the word libido when talking about a child? Very good question, and this is why I do not fuck with Freud. I don't fuck with Freud psychologically, I should say. What a stupid sentence. I don't fuck with you, Freud, on a psychological level. Originally in the script, I had the entire psychosexual stages outlined, and I was going to go through all of them. But now that I'm actually filming it, I can see that it's not very relevant. And also, to be honest, I find it weird and off-putting. I don't want to sound like a prude, but I just don't really like Freud's interpretation of childhood development. Essentially, with the psychosexual stages, at each stage he suggests that children have a fixation on a specific body part, like oral, for example, mouth. But he argues that this fixation is which I just wholeheartedly completely disagree with. I don't even know if I disagree on the fixation part. I haven't really thought about it, but the part is definitely like, I don't know what you're talking about, Freud, sorry. So anyways, yeah, this is my Freud call out. Freud, you're cancelled, you're over, you should be scared. We're gonna mass report your Patreon. Your time is finished. Anyways, all you have to know for Anna's work about the latency period is that Freud argued, and obviously she subscribed to her father's rhetoric, Freud argued that during the latency period, the child's libido is repressed and sublimed. He argued that the process of sublimation was the unconscious act, if I'm recalling correctly, of repressing unacceptable actions and letting them out in socially acceptable ways. So given the repression of the libido and the child's new unconscious urge to sublimation, you can see why, from Anna's perspective, this was the perfect age for psychoanalysis. Anna also adopted a very idiopathic approach to working with children. She would sometimes help them write stories and sometimes help them knit clothes for their bears. She believed that forming a strong therapeutic alliance with children would better help the psychoanalytical results. We now know this to be true. Studies show that building a relationship between practitioners and clients better assists in therapeutic outcomes. Anna continued her psychological pursuits in Vienna, opening a school, training other psychologists in the art of child psychoanalysis, and eventually opening a nursery. This nursery was opened in collaboration with a woman called Dorothy Burlingham. Born into a life of extravagant luxury in 1891, Dorothy Burlingham was a direct descendant to the Tiffany & Co. fortune, her grandfather being the founder of the company. For the discussion of Dorothy and her subsequent relationship with Anna, I'm using her biography, which was written by her grandson. This biography was titled The Last Tiffany, a biography of Dorothy Tiffany Burlingham. This book actually made me cry, which isn't something that I expected going into this video at all. I don't think it will make you cry when I recount it, but yeah. Dorothy was married to a man called Robert Birmingham. This marriage, unfortunately, was an unhappy one. Dorothy claimed that before the two had actually even married, Robert had suffered a nervous breakdown which had left him inhospitable and uncomfortable to be around. Following this, Dorothy decided to leave Robert in order to seek therapeutic assistance from the Freuds for her young son, Bob. She denoted to her nephew that her reason for going to Vienna was entirely because of Bob. Given her shaky marriage, however, I and her grandson writing this book postulate that it was probably more of an easier escape from her unhappy marriage. Dorothy's life had been marred by the volatile temperament of her father. Her grandson therefore speculated that in leaving Robert, Dorothy had done what her mother had not. A direct quote from the book being, "Dorothy seems to have done what Mama Lou had not." Mama Lou being in reference to Dorothy's mother. Arriving in Austria, Dorothy and Anna became inseparable, living and working side by side. Anna was even regarded by people surrounding the two women to be co-parenting Dorothy's children. There are some really endearing passages in the biography regarding how the two women spent their time together. Travelling in Dorothy's car, which would have been a rare luxury in 1900s Austria, to the Vienna woods, in which they would explore carpets of strawberries and patches of melting snow. Anna, in return, supposedly gave Dorothy a really beautiful jeweled brooch, which Dorothy promptly lost. Before World War II had forced the Freuds and the Burlingtons being Dorothy and two of her children, to flee Austria, the two women opened the nursery, which I briefly mentioned before explaining Dorothy's backstory. The goal of this nursery was to A, assist impoverished children, and B, give the psychologists a constant barrage of interactions with children to help better inform their observations. Also, I feel like I'm scowling at you whenever I speak. It's because my nose is so itchy and I want to itch it so bad, so every single time I say a line I have to look in so that I don't twitch my nose around. This nursery, as I just alluded to, was short-lived, as the Freuds and the Burlingtons had to relocate to London. It was here in London that the two women opened the Hampstead War Nurseries. This nursery's goal was to assist children who had their lives decimated by the war, and also primarily employed people who had also had to flee their countries from the war. Dorothy was not just a partner or an assistant to Anna, she was an intellectual equal. The two women would go on to author numerous papers together, detailing their observations during their time at the helm of Hampstead. During this time, the two women shared a bedroom together in the Freud family home, and Anna was still regarded to be co-parenting Dorothy's two children. It has been noted that in previous living arrangements, the two would share a bedroom that contained one single double bed. Okay, so were Dorothy and Anna lesbians? This question seems to irk the psychological community at large. Most of the articles I've read seem to hand wave this question and shrug it off like it's annoying that we're even asking it. Maybe this is a hot take, but if under the comments of every article Anna published people were saying, is she a lesbian? That would be annoying to me because it's not relevant to her body of work. But merely asking if she was a lesbian, I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of clear why people were at her sexuality, given her relationship with Dorothy. In Dorothy's biography, the very same text which denotes that the two women shared one bed, the author states, "The body of evidence makes it seem profoundly unlikely that they were lesbians in the sexual sense of the word." Anna's asceticism and Dorothy's program of sublimation certainly argue against it, as does Anna's concern for Bob's heterosexuality. It would have taken a hypocrite to discourage homosexuality in him while reveling in it herself, and Anna Freud was not hypocritical. So if you couldn't tell from the side-eye, this passage really annoyed me to read. Literally the line before this, the author was pondering why these two women would have pushed their beds together, and this was the conclusion that he came to. It is no secret that the early 1900s were not a fun time to be a homosexual. Why on earth would these two very intelligent women have left clues, hints or notes around suggesting that they were in a sexual relationship? I don't even say this to insist that they were having sex. I don't care if they were having sex or not. And this seems to be the fixation of a lot of articles. We don't know if they had sex. Okay, fine, we don't know if they had sex. But what we do know is that they shared a bedroom in which they shared a bed. They co-parented children. They lived together, they worked together, and they used to frolic around strawberry fields in Vienna together. We know that, despite having promising prospects back home in America, World War II emerged a Dorothy Burlingham whose course was fixed and whose future was indissolubly bound to Anna Freud. Indissolubly bound! You wrote that yourself. In all senses of the word, in my subjective opinion, these two women were in a lesbian relationship. And the biography can't even deny this fully, so opts for referring to them as intellectual lesbians. Whatever the that means. No, like, I'm not a dark, I'm not a raging she is my intellectual lesbian. Like, she's just my intellectual lesbo. If we run with my supposition for the sake of the video, that being that the two were in a lesbian relationship, why then were they so adamant that they were not? As we already discussed, it would not have been favourable in the slightest to be an open homosexual in the early 1900s. Still though, does this run any deeper? Freud regarded homosexuality as something to be fixed, an accidental variation of expression. To be very clear, Freud was actually a progressive given his time period. In responding to a mother who was inquiring for help about her gay son, Freud remarked that it is a great injustice to persecute homosexuality as a crime, and stated that many highly respectable individuals of ancient and modern times have been homosexuals, several of the greatest men among them. That's my ally. I don't know if I'm going to articulate this well, but his position that homosexuality was something fixable was seemingly less that he perceived it as something evil and immoral, but more that he thought that homosexuality was representative of a conflict in the unconscious that could be resolved, and then as such the homosexual individual would revert to the natural course, being heterosexuality. Freud's experience with lesbianism, however, may be more substantive in understanding Anna's seeming repression. In a paper published in 1920, and I'm going to get my laptop for this one because I can't remember the title of this because it's too long. The Psychogenus of a Case of Homosexuality in a Woman. Okay, it wasn't that long, I'm just thick. Freud suggested that his then client was expressing symptoms of lesbianism because the birth of her younger brother had confused her Electra complex, and instead of male objects of desire, she now had female objects of desire. I explained the Electra and the Oedipus complexes in the part that I cut out because I didn't like it. So I'll be very, very brief. The Oedipus and the Electra are like the mum thing, where he thought that young boys wanted to fuck their mums and he thought that young girls wanted to fuck their dads. So what he was essentially saying here is that the birth of this girl's younger brother confused the girl's Electra complex into an Oedipus complex, meaning that she had the boy one wanting to fuck the mum. I think, again, from my novice interpretation, he probably explains it better than that, and if you read the paper you'd probably be like, oh Maddie, you're stupid, and that was not what he said, but that's what I think he was getting at. So with this lesbian client, Freud was also seemingly quite frustrated. He regarded her as a misandrist and ceased his psychoanalytical sessions with her, feeling like he just couldn't get through to her because he was a man. During this time, Anna was in training with him and so may have been in these very sessions. Could it be possible that, seeing her father's frustration with this lesbian client, Anna felt the need to repress her own sexuality? Obviously, from what we have available, Freud's frustration seemed to be more with her apparently misandrist tendencies, but could it be that Anna got her wires crossed and thought that his frustration was towards the client's lesbianism? Could it be that, given her love and admiration for her father's work, Anna was especially cautious with Dorothy as not to tarnish her father's legacy in a violently homophobic time period? An article published by the British Psychological Society entitled "Was Anna Freud a Lesbian?" denotes that we all need to live with the uncertainty in regards to Anna's sexuality. Dorothy's biography concludes with her final days. Her final days were spent in the Freud family home in London. It was Dorothy's birthday and one of her grandsons was present. And although it was her birthday, everybody could feel the spectre of the end looming over Dorothy. Anna had visited Dorothy during dinner time and noted the pretty colours of the leaves outside the window, dancing and oscillating between shades of red and yellow. Cutting into the silence in a way in which shocked the grandson, Anna noted that the leaves are falling, just like the last act of Cyrano de Bergerac. In this play, referenced by Anna, Cyrano, lying face to face with the certainty and finality of death, finally musters the courage to inform Roxanne of his undying love for her. Dorothy passed away not long after this. The song that played at Dorothy's funeral was the same that played at Anna's a few years later. I stand here waiting for my friend. I wait for him to take a last farewell. I long, my friend, to enjoy the beauty of the evening at your side. Where are you? You have left me alone for so long. This is the part that made me cry, but I'm not going to cry again. The author of this biography denotes that the grandson present thought that Anna's words were directed at him, as in, you have come to declare your love for your grandmother now that she lays here dying. The author himself counters this and argues that he thinks that Anna's words meant that now that Dorothy was dying, Anna was finally willing to declare her love for the entire Burlington family, which she had only done prior through Dorothy. To which I say, how many times do you have to be hit in the head with a chair to realise that you're being hit in the head with a chair? I feel like it's quite obvious from how I've read it, but to me, and the reason why it made me so emotional was because this was Anna's declaration of her love for Dorothy, maybe even for the first time in front of another person, being her grandson. That's why before I read that, I read the snippet from the British Psychological Society's article, Was Anna Freud a Lesbian? Because after reading that last segment of the biography, there was absolutely no uncertainty to me whether or not Anna Freud was a lesbian. This account of Anna's life, as I've stated, was not comprehensive. She contributed so much to our understanding, specifically of child psychology, that if I tried to recount it all, the video would probably be 5 hours and you probably would have clicked off it because it would have been very dry. The previously mentioned British Psychological Society article concluded with denoting that Anna did not feel worthy of a biography. According to this article, she had stated that there was not enough action. You would say all there is to say in a few sentences. She spent her life with children. There may not have been enough action, Anna, but you certainly left us with a large legacy of psychological work and a lesbian love story for the ages. Okay, so this is something that I wanted to start doing at the end of my videos, because I do like writing scripts, but I find them I find them kind of restrictive, and two, I feel so awkward reading off a script, which I think you can probably tell, because when I go off script I think I can talk much more naturally, whereas when I'm in a script I very much lock in and I go quite robotic. So I'd like to do something that I'm just going to call footnotes because I'm unoriginal, and talk about some stuff that I couldn't find a way to fit in but I still wanted to mention anyway. Something that I found really funny was Freud, now I'm referencing Anna, sorry, I'll say Anna. Anna's devotion to her dad for her whole life. She had such a staunch dedication to his psychological ideas that she almost caused a terminal split in the British Psychological Society because she was having major beef with another psychologist. I'm using Wikipedia, by the way. Oh my gosh, I am James Somerton. Yeah, this is just an informal chat though, so I don't feel bad about it. The controversial discussions is what they were called, and it was her arguing with another psychologist called Melanie Klein. I can't really be bothered to get into the psychology of it, sorry, it's 1 AM right now and I had to refilm this whole section. Basically they were arguing about how a child should be therapized at a specific age. I think it was the pre-Oedipal child, if I'm recalling correctly, and they both were arguing, and obviously Anna was saying my dad's way is right, and Melanie Klein was saying no, my way is right. And then they argued so hard during the controversial discussions, as they were called, that they almost split the psychology in half. And then after the controversial discussions, again I'm on Wikipedia just to be clear, there emerged groups of psychologists that sided with each of the women. They were the Kleinians, the Anna Freudians, or the middle or independent group, and I don't know, that just tickles me. I just find it funny. Kleinian sounds colour. I'm a Kleinian, but I'm obviously, no, I was gonna say I'm obviously an Anna-Freudian, but I don't even like her dad's idea, so I can't even say that. I'm an Anna-Freudian because I support her lesbian antics. Also, I found this article, let me get my laptop back out. I found this article, hold on. Yeah, okay, I found this article and it's by Psychology Today. I don't know if that's a reputable, wow. I don't know if that's a reputable source, but that's why I didn't include it, because I could not fact check this. I tried to find, like, I scrolled to the bottom to look for her references. I tried to Google this and nothing came up. So I don't know if this is reputable at all, hence why I'm putting it in the footnotes. But I found it very interesting, so I'm going to talk to you about it now. Okay, so this article, 10 things about Sigmund Freud you wish you hadn't learned. So Sigmund believed that homosexuality in men is neurotic, but not particularly problematic, which I think that we talked about earlier in the video. Lesbianism, however, he considered a gateway to mental illness. This, according to Sigmund, is because only men have moral sense. We all evolved from apes, so no human is born with it. But boys acquire morality through the castration complex, the fear that their fathers will emasculate them for their behaviour. Having nothing obvious to neuter, girls and women are essentially amoral, lying and conniving to get what they want. Girls must be guided through civilized life by a father and a woman by a husband. And because they choose not to marry, lesbians remain loose cannons, fundamentally untrustworthy and unstable. Very big if true. I wanted to include this in my video so badly. I was just going to do it anyway, but then I thought, no, that's not integrity, because I can't find a second source for it. All I can find is this article. But if this is the case, this again really reframes why Anna would not have spoken about her sexuality. But again, because I don't have a good source for this, I don't even want to say that because it's just pure speculation. Freud taught that lesbianism is always the fault of the father and curable by psychoanalysis. That again is really interesting, because if he did say that, again, Anna would not have wanted to come out as a lesbian because she loved her dad and would not have wanted to make him look like a bad father. And then this article also says that in reference to Anna's beating fantasies, it talks about how Freud analysed these, which we do know to be true. And then it says, he spoke publicly about her fantasies at a conference while Anna sat on the stage in the wife's chair near the podium. He did not, however, name the patient under discussion. We know the patient was Anna because when she wanted to become an analyst, she described the same fantasies, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so not only did she let her dad interrogate her mom's fantasies, she also allegedly, according to this article, had to sit in a conference and listen to him discuss them. Anyways, that's the end of this video now, and that's the end of the footnotes too. What I will ask of you is to please follow my Twitter, or X, sorry. This is purely like an ego thing for me. I would just like to have Twitter followers, and I'd also like to be able to do like polls and gauge audience interest in specific topics I want to cover. So I'd really appreciate it greatly if you would follow my X. It will be the top link in the description, so please head over there and follow me. Also, it's October next month, did you know? So I'm going to be doing like something, oh, I hate the word spooky, so I'm not going to say it, that makes me cringe. I'm going to be doing something scary for October. Stay tuned for that. I'm not sure which I'm going to be. I'm not sure which I'm going to do. I need to get off now because I cannot believe how long my camera has stayed recording for, and I don't want to push my luck. So thank you so much for watching, especially if you've got this far, and I will see you next month. Bye!